morning. This is Joyce Graff. I'm one of the teachers at the Brookline Senior Center, and this is our good class of the Brookline Bees. We get together. Hey, we get together every week and we talk about quilting and things that we can do at home. We've done mending and things like that. And one of the issues that always comes up, especially for seniors, is some changes in our physical capabilities. So sometimes it's vision, sometimes it's sensation or movement. Maybe we've lost some of the fine muscle control. But for me, I love to keep on sewing because it's my creative outlet and it's fun for me. So I learned different ways of doing the same old things that keep me on trucking. So I'm going to share some of that with you in the session I'm calling Keep On Sewing, and we'll see what we can do. So there are lots of different issues that we're dealing with. Vision issues, manual dexterity, arthritis, achy shoulders, whatever. And so that presents some challenges in sewing, like threading needles here from a lot of people. Keeping your seams in even depth if you're having trouble seeing exactly where the needle is in relation to the edge of the fabric. Holding pins, picking up pins, sometimes cranking the machine. I had a problem at one point where it was really painful for me to turn the wheel on the machine, and so I had to deal with that one. Holding tools, controlling tools, and cutting fabric. So those are some of the challenges I thought we'd talk about today. Anybody have other ones that you want to throw in the mix? Any other thing you're finding challenging? Okay.
But there's a thing on the plate that says 3/8, 5/8, 6/8, and 3/8, 5/8, 7/8. You put the material right next to that line and you keep it there on one of those lines that I just mentioned of fractions, and you have a straight stitch. You have it going straight without no.
Yes, you're exactly. That's exactly right, Millicent. The problem is that not everybody can read those little lines, and you know, keeping against a line that's practically not visible is sometimes difficult. One of the things you can do is put a piece
But that's because they cut the material. They don't cut it even. They might have to go off the line.
Well, that's another one of the challenges. But one of the things you can do is take a piece of masking tape and put it at the position that you want on the table, and keep it against the tape. And the tape is easier to see than the little 5/8 of an inch marking. So I wanted to talk a little about posture. There's a new science that's only about 20 years old. It's called ergonomics, if you've heard this word. And
I heard this word before. They have ergonomics, crocheting needles. I have some of them.
That's right. So here this guy is at a computer table, and they're talking about it mostly with computers and I got carpal tunnel from computers. But you can see you can get pain in your neck, in your back, in your lower back, in your elbows, as well as in your hands. So it's very important to sit properly and work efficiently in your workspace. How you sit and how you hold things are really terribly important. And this picture tells you that this woman is at a bad angle. She's stretching too far with her foot. She can't see real well what she's doing, and her back and her elbow are not supported. So in the correct posture one, where you see the green lines that I've put, you need to be working so that your thigh bone is parallel to the floor. And so you may need to adjust the height of the seat in order to make that happen, or even put a footrest under your foot. But your thigh bone should be parallel with the floor. Similarly, your forearm should be parallel with the floor. And preferably you should be sitting with your back against a chair. So if you need a pillow, something like that, to help you. And then you worry about the sight line. Can you see your work well? And if not, maybe you need to tilt the sewing machine so that you can see your work without straining, without craning your neck or hunching over. doing any of those things will get to you when you're doing it. And this is the whole problem, the larger problem that ergonomics is trying to solve is what's called repetitive stress injury. So when you do the same thing again and again and again and again, then you have an opportunity to injure yourself. Butchers, for example, who are constantly, making that slicing motion, or people who use a hammer repeatedly or a screwdriver. It's something that we need to worry about with many different professions. So here in needlework, it's how we hold our hands. And it's important to understand about this. Does anybody have carpal tunnel syndrome? I do. Well, good if you don't, but this is one thing that we need to think about so that we don't get it. And so carpal tunnel injury, it's this right here. The nerves go through the set of bones here in your wrist. There's a whole bunch of bones there. They're called the carpals. And there's a little channel going down through those bones that these nerves have to run through. And so your wrist position will either irritate or not irritate depending on the position of her hands. So here she's holding her hands well. This is a good position to hold your hand in. That's what's called neutral. And it keeps that channel open so the nerves can move back and forth through that channel without injuring you. And here this lady has an embroidery hoop. Again, her wrists are in a good position. And what you need to do is turn your work, not your hand. So instead of putting your hand in a funny position, you should make sure that you're turning your work and not your hand. If you are having problems with your hands or your elbows, there are splints that you can use, but you don't want to overuse them because you can weaken your muscles. You want to use your muscles as much as possible, but if it's hurting, you need to soothe it. And so there are all kinds of little gloves. You're not the only person who has this problem. Many gloves have been invented to help you with this. Here's one that wraps around your hand. There's lots of them on the internet. And there are exercises you can do to strengthen the muscles and make sure that your carpal tunnel is staying open. The wrist extension and the stress balls, grip strengthening kinds of stress balls are also helpful.
But if you have a finger, Joyce, that you can't bend, look at the difference between these two fingers. I can bend this one.
Yeah.
But I can't bend this one from the proximal position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these things happen. I had a trigger finger that I had to have repaired, that it would go down and then I couldn't get it back up.
Yeah.
And then I had to, manually bring it back up. And I actually did have to have some surgery to repair it, but it repaired very well.
Oh, you're lucky. Good.
Yeah. If you're a knitter, one of the things I discovered is if you use circular needles, you see she's doing a flat piece of work, but with a circular needle. And what that does for you is that you don't have the weight of the piece hanging off on the two ends. And I noticed, especially if I was knitting on an airplane, if you have straight needles, you're bumping your neighbor all the time. Whereas if you use circular needle, you can stay closer to your body. And even a very large piece is much easier to work because you don't have the weight pulling you down on the end of the long straight needle. Crocheting, similarly, one of the problems with crocheting is that it gets very hard sometimes to hold that very skinny little needle. And so my mother crocheted right up until she died. She lived to be about 100. And she used one of these special needles. It's broader. It has more of a grip to it. There are several styles. I'll show you some later. there's a whole bunch of styles because, again, you're not the only person with this problem. Arthritic hands get to the point where they really have a hard time holding that skinny needle. Threading a needle is one of the big challenges, and I sent you all some embroidery needles. Embroidery needles have a wider hole. It doesn't just have one little teeny hole. It has this broader hole because they're built for the multiple strands that we deal with embroidery cotton. And this way you can have a bigger hole to aim at, or you could even use a needle threader. And needle threaders work better with embroidery needles than they do with the little single hole needles. And so again, I've sent you a couple of different styles of embroidery of needle threaders so that you can find the one that you like the best, that works best for you. So I like the golden eye ones. It has better contrast, so you can aim at the hole a little more easily. And it has a bigger hole for an embroidery needle. And embroidery needles work fine for everything. You want an embroidery needle, which is a sharp needle, and not a tapestry needle, which looks very much the same, but they're blunt. So tapestry needles are blunt, embroidery needles are sharp, and so for the sewing that we're doing through fabric, you need a sharp needle. And make sure you have good light available for you as well. Very important. In making sure that you have good light, sometimes there's not very good light underneath this is called the throat of your sewing machine. From this machine housing to the needle is called the throat. And in this area, we need good light, not only for threading needles, but also for working, for seeing where you want the edge of the fabric to be. And I found that this kind of additional lighting is really pretty inexpensive. So for about $30, you can get this strip of tiny little lights and just put it inside or wherever you want it. And it has its power source thing that comes with it. So these lighting kits from inspiredled.com are really cool, and they can give you some additional light where you may need it. There are lots of fancy lamps too, but they're a lot more expensive than this. One of the biggest things for aging hands is consider a machine, because upgrading your tools and automating part of the hard part will keep you doing the creative work. And to me, the creative work is the important part. And whether I put every stitch by hand in the quilt is much less important to me than making a beautiful piece that I enjoy making. So consider a machine. But I want to caution you, because don't just buy a sewing machine because it's cheap. Price is not the only factor. Over the long run, what you're going to want is the features that are going to make life easier for you. So a couple of those features, and you'll hear me talk about these in this presentation, is a drop-in bobbin. The older machines have a bobbin that you have to go down under and in a weird position to get to. Drop-in bobbins are a whole bunch easier to deal with, both visually and manually. Built-in needle threader can be great. Millicent had one on her machine. We struggled a little bit with it this morning, but we did not succeed in getting hers to work. But it takes a little learning, and but it can be really wonderful. I enjoy my needle threader a lot. And some of the new machines have a needle up-down button. You just push a button and the needle goes up, or the needle goes down, as the case may be. And you can sometimes even tell the machine, every time you stop, I want the needle to be down or the needle to be up. And then depending what you're doing, one of those choices is going to be better. If you're finished, you want the needle up. But if you're turning a corner, you want it to stop with the needle down, right? So those are features that you might want to do. Another one is a built-in walking foot. I have a machine with a built-in walking foot, and I didn't even know that this feature existed, but when I went just browsing for sewing machines, and I saw the walking foot, I went, I'm not leaving without this sewing machine. So I wound up buying the machine. So threading sewing machine needles. This is a built-in needle threader, and they all have a thing sort of like this, where you bring the thread down, you hook it over this needle. Now you're the right horizontal position to get to the hole in the needle, and it swings a little itty bitty hook through the needle. You hook the thread on the needle, and it will pull it back through. This is another needle threader. We tried one of these this morning. We actually broke one this morning. So they're all kind of delicate because that tiny little hook is so small. This one actually pushes the thread through the hole. This one pulls the thread through the hole. But so these are a couple of bucks. This is a nice feature that might be built into your next machine or not. If you do have one, though, learn how to use it. Keeping seams even, and this is sort of what Millicent was talking about. On the machine, you have these printed little lines, but it's gray on gray. And so you may or may not be able to see that so easily. But there are ways that you can do it. You can just put a piece of masking tape. You don't have to get anything special. But this is a commercial tape that they sell for the purpose, where you line it up, and now you have this nice solid line to aim your material along that line so that you'll keep a nice even seam.
I have some colorful tape
Yeah.
that I got at Michael's, about 2 spoons full.
Just putting a piece of tape over here, and you can make it a longer line too. Whoops. That it will help you guide your fabric. This is the one we've been using at the center. I got these 1/4 inch foot with a little fence for each of our machines, so that we would all be doing a nice neat 1/4 inch seam and everything would fit together. So there are 2 things that keep a quilt looking wonderful, and that's accurate cutting and accurate seams. So those 2 things are the most important. Holding pins. This has been a challenge for me. My favorite pins forever have been these silk pins. They're wonderful, they're skinny, they go through really well through lots of fabrics, but they're also have a very small head, and they're very hard for me to pick up now. So now I've gone to glass-headed pins, and this is what we've been using in the center. The glass-headed pins, and notice it's a glass-headed pin and not a plastic head on the pin, and the reason for that is if you touch it with an iron, the plastic ones will melt and the glass ones will not melt. There are other kinds of pins you could consider. I have some of all of these actually. Flat-headed pins are really good for certain things. Betty, you'll probably remember I've used flat-headed.
Yeah, with the stack and whack.
With the stack and whack, because what you want to do with a stack and whack is hold things carefully in position, a lot of things. And the flat-headed pins don't add bulk to it. They don't twist things as much. They're a little longer. They're not quite as strong as these pins. So there are certain things that they do better and certain things they don't do as well. So and that's why I have a little bit of all of the above, right? And the other one I wanted to point out, if you're having sensation issues in your fingers, is these button-headed pins. They're a little bulkier, but they're easier to find. You can see we've got bright colors going here, but these also have more substance to the head. And so if you have trouble picking things up, these are easier to pick up.
You know, one thing that can cause the tunnel carpet, the pain in the arm, is playing the piano all the time. I got there, I stopped playing, gave up playing the piano because I got it. When I gave up playing the piano, the tunnel carpet or whatever in the arm, the pain went away.
Yeah, that's another one of the things that often causes carpal tunnel again, it's that repetitive stress injury that you're doing the same functions all over the time and not keeping your hand in the right position. So this is the right position, this is the wrong position for your hand, and this is the wrong position for your hand. So piano players don't always pay attention, but you should be playing the piano like this.
And you should have an armrest when playing the piano.
Well, it's hard to do that on piano because you're moving your hand around a lot. But
But it
anyway,
should fit right across the keys, right below the keys, from right to
Yeah.
left.
the key is to keep your wrist in neutral. And the other thing that I always do is I have magnetic pin holders, and we've got these at the center also. And there are a couple of reasons why you want a magnetic pin holder. I mean, they organize your pins and make it easier for you to fish one out. But the other thing is, when you're picking them up, all you have to do is turn this thing upside down. It's a magnet. It'll pick it up off the table.
Oh, wow.
Right. So pins are metal, and magnets will pick up things. And if you're a bingo player, you probably already have one of these hanging around. Bingo magnets to pick up your bingo chips, but they'll also pick up pins. And one of the challenges for me is if I drop a pin on the floor, it's hard enough finding it visually, and it's also very hard to pick it up. So I have a magnet like this. This is actually a carpentry tool because they use it to pick up screws that fall on the floor, screws and nails, and it telescopes. So I can stand up and just lean over. I don't have to get down on my hands and knees and pick up pins from the floor.
Oh my goodness.
So it'll pick up one pin or it'll pick up a bunch of pins. You just have to be careful not to use it too close to the leg of your sewing machine table. If it's a metal table, it'll grab that too. But this is the metal part. That's a magnet. And the telescoping capability is really nice. You can get it from any hardware store. Okay, cranking the machine. I got to the point where I had a shoulder problem that it made it and my hand, it made it very painful for me to crank the machine. So what did I do about that? I actually got a machine that had a button here that says up, down. So if you want the needle in a different position, you don't have to crank it at all. You just hit this button and it'll go. It toggles, so it'll go down. The next time you hit it, it'll go up, blah, blah, blah. And as they say, some machines, you can tell it, okay, every time you stop, I want you to be up or down, as the case may be. So you can see this machine has a built-in needle threader as well. So lots of times, this is sort of the accessories package, you know, like in a car. Does it have automatic windows or not? I think all of them, yeah, right. Holding and controlling tools. So I sent you a bunch of needle threaders, one of which looked like this, your little floral one. And the reason I added this one is this has more substance to it, so it's easier to pick it up and hold it. So whenever you're trying to find tools that are going to be easier to pick up and hold, you want to look for wider handles and textured grips. That's the key. So for example, here's a seam ripper, okay? And look at this ergonomic handle. There are a number of different options. You're not the only one with this problem. So I was amazed how many different styles there are, and they're all a little bit different. So you figure out which one is comfortable for you to use. But the smaller ones are a little harder to deal with than the bigger ones. But also if you're using a very small stitch, you may need a smaller one with a tinier hook. Crochet hook, here's another style of crochet hook.
That's what I need, and I haven't been able to find it.
Oh, there are a ton of them online. There must have been 100. I kid you not. There must have been 100 different styles of ergonomic crochet hooks on Amazon last night when I was looking.
for a wood one.
Okay, so here's a kind of scissors, and I just wanted to show you it has a spring in it. And I have spring-loaded scissors for you at the center. You know, some of you have used them. But the idea is clamping down on something big enough is usually not very hard. I mean, if worse comes to worse, you put one side of it on the table and you squash it with your flat hand. You know, we can go down, but then when it comes up again is the problem. And so these have a spring in them that will force the handles apart again. So the handles go apart, the blades go apart, and you're on to the next one. So here we have a bunch of these at the center. This is from a Swedish maker called Fiskars, and the blades are very sharp and good as well. But these spring-loaded scissors are great for arthritic hands. And here's another new one that is being sold not only for sewing, but also for crafts. They're different styles now, so just look around, or if you're in Michael's, play with them and see what feels most comfortable to you. But the idea is if it hurts, let's not do it. You know, let's figure out a way you can do it without it hurting. Cutting fabric is a challenge, and you've seen these tools I have at the center for you because they're so much kinder to our bodies. And I saw one thing that says these are the 3 essential tools to make sewing easier. A self-healing mat, and it doesn't have to be Alpha, there are many brands, but this is a good one too. A self-healing mat, so you can use a like a scalpel on it that they do for crafts, you know, that kind of a cutter. You can use a blade on this and it will just heal itself and be okay for you for the next time. They do eventually wear out, but my experience is they take 20 to 25 years before you really need a new one. So they work pretty well. And so you need a mat, you need a ruler, and for the work we do, a clear ruler is the best. And you need a cutter, and you can see this is one of those ergonomic shapes. There are many ergonomic shapes, and we have a couple at the center. So this is the standard size. This is the traditional shape for a cutter, and this is the ergonomic shape for the cutter. You can see it's wider and it has a better grip. So you put the plastic ruler on top to guide your blade. This is a razor blade, so you have to respect it and treat it very carefully so you don't cut your fingers. You keep your hand on the plastic and out of the way of the blade, and you hug the plastic as you go forward. So that's guiding your cut, and you need to push it down enough to get through the fabric that you're cutting. And the big mistake that people sometimes make with this is trying to just use their hand to make it go down deep enough to cut the fabric. If you try to do it with your wrist, again, you can do a repetitive stress injury. So what I tell people is you want to press down from the shoulder. So you want to stand above it and use your own body weight, your own power to lean down onto the table. So you're not using your wrist too much, you're not using your elbow too much, you're doing it from your shoulder and using your own body weight to create the pressing down that you need to cut the fabric. Does anybody have any questions or concerns or things that came up that you'd like me to talk about?
Or reaction?
Did anybody ever tell you, Joyce, to be careful working with the scissors?
Sure.
So that you don't cut yourself? Who told you that?
Well, beginning with my mother, yes. Don't
My
run.
mother never told me that,
Yeah.
but I know to do it now. I know to do it.
I am just wowed. I didn't know. And when she was knitting, she seemed like she had a pillow under her arms or hands. She had a pillow or something to boost it up, I think. Yeah.
I'm not sure. I don't remember from the picture, but yes, the idea is to make yourself comfortable. This is not supposed to be torture. It's supposed to be fun. Oh, so let's not worry too much about what we can't do. We try to just fill in the blanks around things that are harder now, but focus on what you can do and use tools to provide support to keep you enjoying what we're doing. Make sure if you have vision issues, the lighting is extremely important. Use things with bright colors, not gray on gray. Things that are easier to feel so that you can use your other senses and not depend so much on your vision, and just guide the material against either a little fence or a strip that you can see. And things that you can grip, use wider handles, textured grips, and magnets. You know, picking up little pieces, carpenters have the same problem. Just use magnets to do those things. Strength, use your body weight and body mechanics rather than trying to do everything with your finger or your hand. And in cutting, you want to press down, not out. If you find yourself reaching too much, that's when you can strain things. So you want to be pressing down, keep your arms close to your body, and not stretch too much. Okay, so the goal is to take the work out of it, but keep the fun.
Yay.
Right? So, and let's keep the joy of making beautiful things.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Joyce. It was like when I brought up, you know, what to do about my fingers and my wrist, I find myself, even when I'm out walking, I'm like doing, you know, this when I'm out, you know, just walking, doing stuff with my hands, or it's so I'm getting the habit of doing more exercises. So, and it does help. And back at the time when I was making masks, because I was mass producing and trying to pick up the pins, and it was like I felt my fingers just, you know, getting numb. So,
Yeah.
but this is helpful. The pain will always be there, but you know, I'm having fun with everything.
No, there's a pair of glasses with 160 magnifying called Mighty Sight. They're magnifying glasses. They have 160 of magnifying for better seeing, and it's good for using, like if you're sewing on your sewing machine, knitting, crocheting, putting the thread through a needle. They help you do all that better than your glasses would. And I bought a pair. It's like a buy one get. They charge you another pair for a fee of $6.99. I got this. I'm going to get one pair in the mail today and tomorrow. I'll receive it in the mail. Who wants a pair of these Mighty Sights? Anybody want to?
I don't think I need that one yet, but I know
maybe Claire,
my father
maybe
had
Betty,
something
maybe Claire or Betty need one. Claire or Betty needs it, maybe.
That was the equivalent to that he used to put on jeweler's loops, he called them, that, you know, when jewelers have to deal with very tiny little things, they put on a magnifying glasses kind of thing. And so, yes, depending on the issue you're dealing with, they can be very helpful.
Betty?
No, I'm good. I have one of those from when I did needlepoint. I have one of those magnifying glasses that it was like you put it over your the strap is over your neck, and then the magnifying glass is like, you know, right in front of you, that it leans on your chest that you can adjust.
That's the one, the kind of thing that the men use when they're putting in a battery in a new watch, it sounds like.
It could be. No, I know what she's talking about. So if you think in terms of like a makeup mirror, but it has a strap that goes around your neck so that it projects out from your chest.
Right. Yes.
So it's sort of like the makeup mirrors that you would normally put on the counter, but this one is mounted so that it's right on your chest, and then you hold your needle point under it, and then you see it more clearly.
Yeah, that reminds me of bifocals. I have bifocals, and that's supposed to help me with reading and stuff, but it doesn't. Come on.
I have one of
Yeah.
those. I'll show it to you guys next week. I have it.
Okay.
And Betty, I do what you do too, and this I do as well. It helps the more parts of the hand, kind of massages the hand.
Yeah. And if you have real pain in your wrist, you can even do an ice massage. But the exercise I showed Betty is take your thumb and move it toward your baby finger, and then the ring finger and the middle finger and the index finger, and just go back and forth like that. And that's a good exercise for making sure that you have, and again, you want to keep your wrist in neutral. It's almost like you can brace it. Like I have now, I've just used one finger to brace my wrist so it's in the right position so that I don't injure that carpal tunnel.
Oh, Betty, I have a magnifying glass. I have a magnifying glass too. It's a round thing. It has a light. The magnifying glass I have a light that I can turn on and look to see. And have a brighter light to see things, Betty.
I'm good. It was like when Joyce was bringing up like some of these different tools, it was like, my brother has one of those those magnets with that. So it was like, you keep bringing up things. I says, oh gosh, I have one of those things. Or my brother has one of those tools. My mother had this stuff. I had no idea what she used it for. So, you know, it brings back memories.
Joyce, what's the purpose of putting the one hand here while you're doing this?
But just to remind you to keep your wrist in the right position, because you didn't. If you fold your wrist like this, it's bad because you're crimping that carpal tunnel. Or if you hold it back like that, that's also not a good thing. You want to keep it, they say, in neutral, just as if there were a brace there. And that's just a reminder. You don't really have to keep it there. It's just a reminder. Okay.
Good idea.
Good. Well, thank you, ladies, and I hope you continue to have lots of good fun.
And everybody stay healthy.